moves by too quickly.
I know. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Chrys, and we do thank you for joining us. We're here at It's a Mom Thing, where moms of all ages and in all stages are invited to be with us. And if you're a dad, a grandparent, a teacher who's home from school today, it doesn't matter if you've got kids in your life. This show's for you. We do a lot of things that don't even have to do with having a kid in your life, just to be a better Christian person. Mom,
That's right.
dad, adult person.
That would be our heart would be to bring information that will draw us all closer to God.
But we do know that child rearing is a huge responsibility, and we're here to help you on that journey in some way. And we always say we don't have all the answers, but we know who does.
That's
and
right.
that's who we go to when we don't have the answers, and hopefully that's who you go to as well.
And being mothers as we are, we do know that being a mom of young children can be a lonely place when you're at home a whole bunch, or it can be a crazy place just raising kids. It can make you feel kind of squirrely sometimes. So we're just here to tell you we're in the trenches with you.
In your minivan all the time.
That's it. We're with you.
You can get really squirrely all the time.
And
Absolutely.
Chrys has 10 grandkids, so she's right there with me and running to ball games. And actually, she has 10 that she's running with, so that's three times as much as me.
Someone
Hallelujah.
was teasing me about my minivan the other day, and I'm just like, I have to have it.
Oh, my word.
I don't know what
you'd do without it.
I don't know what I would do without it.
This
I
is
have
not
to
that
have
season.
it. No, it's not. There will be a season,
I don't
maybe.
think there ever will, because you want everybody wants to go with two mama and two papas. So I don't.
And
think
we
that'll
love
happen.
going places with them and taking them places and being there. So I don't know. Right now, the minivan just
think
works for me.
The next step up is a motor coach. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
If y'all are
Maybe.
wanting to travel together,
I really wanted that years ago. When the kids were all younger.
right?
But now I've given up on that dream. So
That might be a little challenging going from game to game back in a big old
I
motor
know.
coach up.
When they were babies, when they're all babies at the same time, I wanted that long stroller like you see that you could put like six,
Oh my word,
six
Margaret.
kids all in one thing. But
I had one that, because I had 3 of them 2 years apart, so I had one that had 2 seats and then a little standing thing at the back, so that Olivia and Nathaniel would sit in it, and Benton was standing on the little back thing.
I had one of those when all
buddy.
mine were little. But it is amazing how quickly that time goes by.
Oh,
And
my.
if you're a mom at home right now with those little bitty ones, trust us when we tell you it will go by very quickly.
I was talking to a sweet little friend of mine, precious new mother, and her baby's like 3 months old, and I said, oh my gracious, I just can't believe that she's grown this much, but how tiny she is. I mean, I'm sure Nathaniel was bigger than her at birth. I mean,
Probably,
I'm just huge.
yeah.
She goes, well, I was just telling my husband she's growing too fast. We need to go ahead and get started on another, because 9 months from now, I'm going to need a baby. I was like, oh my word, you're ambitious.
You will still have a baby in 9 months from now. That one will still be a baby.
Oh, my word.
Well, and I've got twin nieces. That, I have twin nieces on one
So
side.
cute.
And then my other nieces just had 2 boys. So that's 4 added to our family. We just found out yesterday that another niece is expecting another baby.
Wow.
So we've got lots of babies.
Y'all got the babies coming now.
Which is great, because all my grandkids are older and they're just loving.
Yeah.
I found this really interesting mom tip, and it's not just a mom tip, it's an everybody tip. But I love this. This was in Good Housekeeping a few months ago, and it says, this is really the best nutrition tip I've read. It says, eat like it's 1970. Now, that's interesting, because in that year, we consumed 432 calories per day on the average from starchy foods, where now we consume 619 calories per day on starchy foods.
And that includes a whole lot of foods,
Yes.
I've come to realize.
So it says swap a lettuce wrap for the bread in your sandwich and just see the pounds melt away.
Come on now.
So that's really interesting. We talked about this before, how even the plates are bigger and how we went to the supersizing, and you don't hear so much of that anymore. I think that kind of got everybody in trouble.
I was looking at an article this morning that said now these franchises are not willing to change it because they would lose so much money if they did not supersize. Is that not shocking?
You just don't hear that advertising so much anymore.
No, but it's all there. And
but it's still there.
Oh, it's there.
Okay.
And I mean, it's just that supersize, get that extra large.
I don't notice that
thing.
so much anymore. But and then it tells a little thing about if you the drive-throughs we all are accustomed to doing today. They did a 6-year study of 9,000 people, and it showed that people who regularly eat fast food, as well as those off-the-shelf baked things like donuts and stuff like that, over pre-prepared, over 35% more are likely to develop depression than those who laid off eating those types of foods.
And that is incredible because it all turns to sugar. Overload of sugar. And oh my word.
And this was a study of 9,000 people, so I think that's kind of significant.
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
definitely
a little bit of a
representation.
A mom tip for you today, or just a tip for the day that I had read about, and I thought that was really interesting. And then, so then there's this little article in Redbook, and it says, so many people worry that the headache that you have is a brain tumor. And it says 1 in 4,746 people would that happen to. So it's just saying, if you're worrying about these things, think about your odds. And again,
you're going to give yourself a problem worrying like that.
And we say always look at the facts about something, because facts are really what we should base our emotion on, but we don't. We usually base it on how we feel. And so, some people worry, this is a worry, you'll burn down your home by forgetting to unplug the curling iron. I get kind of panicky at that. And even this morning I went back to check, did I turn it all off?
I actually went back to unplug a little lamp this morning.
There you go. It says you actually have 1 in 449,504 chances of burning your house down with a curling iron. Now, I'm saying still go back and unplug it.
Right. You're not saying don't be wise.
Yes. And
you'll be don't worry.
You'll be attacked by a shark. You've got 1 in 10.9 million chances. Okay, some interesting things. Well, our show's on homework.
And we are so glad to be with you today. We're going to talk about winning the homework wars, but first we want to talk about just a wonderful scripture from God's Word. It is the Message, and it's found in Proverbs 5, verse 23. Mark well that God doesn't miss a move you make. That is very encouraging.
Just that alone.
That is very encouraging.
Great.
That can also be a big wake-up call.
It could be.
God does not miss a move you make. Right. He's aware of every step you take. Thank you. The shadow of your sin will overtake you. In other words, He loves us enough not to leave us where we are if we're making a mess. You'll find yourself stumbling all over yourself in the dark. Death is the reward of an undisciplined life. Your foolish decisions trap you in a dead end. So the point is, the bottom line is, mark well that God does not miss a move you make. He's aware of every step you take, which for me is such a comfort and a joy to know that every little thing that's going on is not being overlooked.
And I love this analogy of sin, what sin does in your life.
Yeah,
ever since I fell a few months ago and broke my knee, I'm just, when you've never fallen in your life, you just don't think about it. Once you do, you're very conscious of that. And just the other day, I walked out in the garage and the light was off in the garage, and I was like, whoa, first thing I have to do is find the light.
Yay, Chrys.
Yes, because I'm just like,
I'm proud of
barreling through things. But that's exactly what we have to do with God. We have to find the light.
That's right.
And find Him, because without Him, we are stumbling over ourselves in this darkness that is sin.
I love the way that the Word, especially in the Proverbs, because we do the proverb, we try to read every day along with the day that it correlates with. And you just are so blessed and enriched because that is the book of instruction and wisdom.
Right.
But I love it when in the Proverbs where He'll say the positive or the good thing, and then He'll give a consequence if you don't choose to do it.
Right.
It's just such a fair thing to present both sides of the information so that you're well informed. I love that.
The reality is we are not robots. We have our free will, and God says,
do.
okay, you can do this if you want to.
But if you don't.
Right.
Hello.
And then the next little bit on there was death is a reward of an undisciplined life.
That was the result.
That's the result. And so I love that as we're going to talk about winning the homework wars, because there's a lot of pros and cons about homework. And it's not just a war in individual homes of parents and kids and getting it all done. And then you've got the level of teachers and kids and having it all done and done right and on time. And then you have even a bigger audience of people arguing whether or not homework should even exist. That's been the debate for a long time.
Right.
And just if we just say the word homework, some of you who are listening are probably just getting that little shiver of, don't even say that, because when we were students, that's the thing you didn't want. You just don't want that homework.
Well, and as the kids are in the early elementary years, that homework represents a lot of work for parents too.
Well, that's what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, there's a lot of parents that, because I mean, obviously when they're in middle school and high school, they're doing their own, ideally they're doing their own thing.
Right.
They're in their own.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is still,
exactly
it's 8 hours at school. Then they come home and 2 or 3 hours of homework. And that does represent a big controversy to a lot of people.
And I don't remember just hating homework. I didn't love it, but I don't remember having this horrible, hate relationship with it. That was just, homework was just a way of life.
Yeah. I don't think I hated it. I had great intentions all the time of doing wonderful things with my homework, and I didn't always do it, I don't think.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got good grades, so I must have done it.
I always did mine, so I guess I must have done it too. It's been a while, of course.
I must have. Maybe I just.
But when you think about homework and the reality of our world, homework becomes a lifetime skill. I mean, if we want to buy a new camera, we have to research and do what we call our homework before doing that. If you
that goes across the board with everything.
Anything. If you want to do anything on the political, if you want to have a political conversation, you have to do your homework about what's happening. And so I thought it might be fun just to look at Wikipedia and see what it says about homework and kind of break it down. So the first definition it says is the basic objective of assigning homework to students are the same as schooling in general, to increase knowledge and improve the abilities and skills of the student. I thought, well, that sounds reasonable.
Well, yeah, and the reality is in some of the schools that have larger classes, they get slowed down in the lesson for the day, and that's why they have to take home some homework to drive those principals home.
Yeah, it's just to reinforce.
That's right.
Exactly right.
A lot of that is.
Of course, yeah. Then we've got a few opponents.
That's right. Secondly, opponents of homework cite homeworks as rote or grind work designed to take up children's time, and that would be the opposite side, without offering tangible benefit.
Right. So all this is how Wikipedia, defines it.
I really don't think that there's not a tangible benefit if it's done appropriately.
Right.
I don't.
But that is the other side. That's the key.
Right.
And then it says homework may be designed to reinforce what students have already learned. Of course, that's it. Prepare them for upcoming or complex and difficult lessons. Good. Extend what they know by having them apply it to a new situation. All good, I think. And to integrate their abilities by applying many different skills to a single task.
Right.
So far, I think, Wikipedia is doing a really good job. The next one I'm not so sure about. There's a little debate about that.
Homework also provides an opportunity for parents to participate in their children's education. That may be early on, or if you, like I, homeschooled. I homeschooled and I had to participate to a degree.
Right.
But I very early on did teach my children to read their curriculum, because it is a life skill to learn what it is you have to do, how to figure out how to get it done in a day, and then complete your task.
Absolutely.
And so that was an important thing. I do think that is the big iffy of those four, is how much parents should be involved. And we're going to talk about that even a little bit more along those lines. But this was interesting to me, just the history of homework. And it says that historically, homework has been frowned on in American culture because there were so many fewer students in historically who valued a higher education. Right.
And they were needed for the chores, the everyday chores, so that was
the primary focus.
Yeah. So homework was discouraged not only by parents but also by school districts for a good while in America. And then in 1901, the California legislature passed an act that effectively abolished homework for those who attended kindergarten through 8th grade. But then in the 1950s, with the pressure for us to compete with the other nations, homework made this resurgence, and children were encouraged to keep up with our counterparts in other countries. So by the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s, the consensus in American education was overwhelmingly in favor of homework, again, on all grade levels. So we've kind of gone back and forth in our country.
You think about where it was competitively. I mean, I went to Ouachita Christian.
Right.
Okay. I went to a local Christian high school here in our city.
Right.
I graduated actually from the first graduating class from the campus where it is now. You look at the difference of goals, of pressure, of competition in education between then and now.
Right.
That is huge, just between now and kids graduating today. The huge, it's so competitive.
Right.
That's the pressure is incredible now.
And the reason we're talking about it being a war of any kind is because even in our nation over the last, since we've been here 200 years in America or a little bit more than that, it's gone back and forth with whether it's in or out, whether kids should have homework or should not have homework. And, in the early years of our country, the kids, they didn't want the kids doing homework because they needed to do their chores.
Right.
I mean, that just even stands to reason.
Well, and the whole
today our children don't have chores like they should.
No,
they should.
They sure don't.
But they don't.
But the reason why there was such a big resurgence anyway was because the nation wanted to become more competitive with our national counterparts. I mean, that right there, you're going, okay.
So in 2007, the University of Michigan did a study, and the research concluded that the amount of homework given is increasing over time. In a sample taken of students between the ages of 6 and 9, it was shown that students spend more than 2 hours a week on homework.
Well, hello.
As opposed to 44 minutes in 1981.
Wow.
So, there's been all this analysis and that kind of thing about what kids should do. But in the final analysis, it does say that those kids who are assigned homework in middle and high school actually score somewhat better on standardized tests.
Right.
But the kids that do 60 to 90 minutes of homework in middle school or more than 2 hours in high school actually scored worse. So there's, with all this debate about back and forth, it's iffy about that. And this may have gone on through time. I mean, maybe Mary said Jesus had too much homework. We don't know. But
no,
I
she
do
said,
know.
"Where have you been?" He said, "I've been about my father's
That's
business."
Exactly right, and she was good with that. But I do know that parents today feel way more pressure for their kids to succeed than parents in the past did.
Right.
I mean, because you got to write that in your Christmas letter what your kids did, so there's this pressure.
I used to. I haven't done that in a while.
And so the pressure has definitely turned up, as you said a minute ago, for kids to perform better, and parents also expect that out of their children because there's more pressure for scholarship money.
That's it. We're in the thick of that right now with Olivia being a senior.
Absolutely.
I mean, the letters
that's a big deal.
And all the opportunities for scholarships and filling out all of these applications for scholarships and writing essays. And I mean, it's just incredible. We never had that.
No, that is to say it is what it is. And here's where we are right now in our society. But there are some things, and that's not really the direction we're going with talking about homework today. We're really talking about how to help it not become the nightmare in your family.
Right. And I do think that the way that things have come off with homework, as far as my personal experience between homeschooling and now them being in a private Christian school where they are, that's all I have is my experience. But it has caused a more discipline. It has facilitated more discipline. And there is much more of an endeavor for excellence. I mean, I don't see that will harm them in that place.
No, absolutely.
Because mine are still
let's look at some of the positives about homework.
Good.
Number one, it certainly reinforces certain academic skills.
Yes.
That's what the Wikipedia said it was designed to do, and we know that it does do that.
Right. Obviously, the more information you put in, the more accessible it will be when it's called upon in test time or the standardized test. Obviously, you need to have it put in.
Yes, there is that level of busy work that we get to that, okay, the skill, whatever. But it is designed to enforce academic skills, and it does serve that purpose.
Right. And as I referred to earlier, and this says it even better, it puts children on the path of applying oneself to independent study and perseverance.
Right.
That's the thing.
So hugely important. And that's a skill.
That. Yeah.
Yes, that's a skill we've got to have all the way through our adult life.
All the way through life.
Whatever job you take, you have to be able to apply yourself to some independent study at some point.
Well, and learning to assess what the job is at hand and being able to figure out what you need to do to get it done, and then completing the task.
And to persevere through, I can't figure this out. I can't get this. I get it. Now okay, I've got it.
And it comes from mothering. It goes from mothering all the way to office to
all the way
outside
through.
Any manner of job. You're going to have to be able to figure it out and troubleshoot.
And then homework gives a forum for teaching accountability and time management. That's hugely important. And,
Very
and we're
good.
going to get to, we may not get to it today, maybe in our second section on homework, but we're going to get to some of those ways to how to help teach your kids better accountability and how to manage their time better, because homework certainly is capable of that.
Right, definitely.
And that's huge.
And, it promotes the idea of application, applying themselves. And then what happens when you really apply yourself? The outcome.
Right.
If you really apply yourself to something, the outcome's going to be way better.
When I used to teach, it would amaze me how some child would do really well on their test, and I would say, "You did so good. What did you do different?" And they would say, "Well, I studied last night." Well, imagine that.
Oh,
yeah.
you applied
and so
yourself.
It does tell kids that with application, outcome
That's right.
is better.
Well, absolutely.
And I tell even my grandkids who love to sing with the karaoke, and the microphone and all
Yes,
that.
they do.
I tell them that singers like Justin Bieber don't get out there without any practice. He practiced
hello.
hours and hours and hours for this performance or this tour that he goes on.
Right.
And it's hours.
That's right.
So in every area of our life, there will be this sense of homework that means we're going to apply ourselves in some way, and then we'll get this expected outcome.
That's right. You got to invest well
Right. You
to
have
receive
to.
that profit, that gain.
You have to.
So how do we get our kids to do their homework and still have family time and peace around the house?
Right. That's really
the question.
The question.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I think we have to start with asking ourselves this: who gets the most upset in your household when the homework isn't done? See,
That would not be me,
that's the question.
because I don't even honestly.
But you have older kids now,
I do.
so you
I have
should
older
not
kids.
be. Yes.
I have older kids, and it's very clear that there are times when I do check in with the teachers,
Right.
because I've learned that if I'm not just checking in to be sure things are on task, that I could be surprised
Right.
for things that are really goofy. I mean, that's just unnecessary for things to be slipping under the radar like that. I
Right.
think it's important to just check in. But there are consequences, and the worst ones are your own transcript,
Right.
But when they're younger, they're
When
in
they're
a
younger,
process
it's
of
different.
learning that.
But if the answer to that question, if you find yourself the one to be the most annoyed, aggravated, concerned, losing sleep over about your child not doing homework, then you've got got it switched around the wrong way. And
Right.
many of today's parents have gotten confused over this issue. When I think back on my parents, they were not confused one bit. My parents knew exactly who should be upset when the homework assignment wasn't done, and that was not them. That
That's
was
right.
me.
That was right.
Because there would be some consequence
That's it right there.
that I would be affected by, not them. They had been to school.
Hello.
And so today, modern America today, if the child is not doing his or her homework, the parents, the teachers, maybe the guidance counselor, anybody else who wants to jump in there, steps in to make it their job to worry and fret and devise new plans for little Billy or big Billy who won't do their homework. So the first thing you need to ask in your home is, who is worrying the most about getting this homework done? And children have to understand that homework is their job,
Their responsibility.
their responsibility.
That's right.
I used to tell my kids that this is your job.
That's
I
right.
work, your daddy works, you're going to work one day. Right now, you work at being in school,
That's right.
and you
That is your occupation.
put your best foot forward.
And when you fill
That's
out
right.
forms, that's what they say. Student is listed as an occupation.
That's right.
It really is.
Because that is it.
And that's training them to be employed
That's
one
right.
day.
And
if
it's
we do
up
it well.
to them.
as
If you do it
parents.
well, that's right.
That's right.
And if they do it, if they accept that job, like
That's right.
it's a Mission Impossible. If you accept this job, what
That's
does it say?
right.
This will
If you choose
yeah, you
to
choose to
accept.
accept it. Exactly right. So we have to have that very clear understanding first of who is responsible for the homework. The responsibility for it getting done and done correctly and turned in on time is not your responsibility. It is your child's responsibility.
Solely the child's.
Now, I think we should understand, all of us should understand, that parents and teachers and counselors are all trying to help with this.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're here to
this is-
facilitate.
Yeah, and they're not, it's misguided for those of us, too, who got too over-involved with our homework. And, we didn't do it to be mean and ugly or to make our kids bad or anything. We just got to that point without knowing it sometimes. Does that make sense? I don't think we're doing it, we're well-intentioned. But
right. Well, we're obviously not doing to hurt our children, but it does put them in a place to be crippled because what that says to them, they'll learn at a young age, if I don't perform, others will step up and give me the attention and do it for me or help me do it.
And we're not talking about kids who truly need help.
Right.
Have been diagnosed with a problem and we have to help them. That's a totally different thing. So we're not talking about that.
On the big projects, my kids have been known to come up with very big ideas and they have an idea of how they want it. And we can facilitate walking that out with them while they're doing it. We can work with them in a project situation. It's like we've said before, parenting should be more of a coaching position where we're on the sidelines encouraging them, facilitating, helping them get the things that they're going to need, the materials together.
And we're not leaving their side like a coach does not.
No.
But he's on the side. He's not on the court.
You got this is our phrase. You got this.
You got it. You can do it.
That's right.
Now, John Roseman says in his book, he has a book actually out called Ending the Homework Hassle by John Roseman. So you may want to get that if you're really struggling with this. And it'll give you a lot more details, but we're going to borrow some of his things in this next segment. And he says there are two types of homework parents, the over-involved, and he said those hover, assume responsibility, encourage dependence, and send negative messages.
That's just dangerous.
So the negative messages. We don't want to be
the
over-involved. But then the second kind is the consulting kind, where we're available, assign responsibility, encourage independence, and send positive messages.
Right.
So then he goes on and gives what he calls his ABCs.
Okay. A is all by myself, which I remember when my kids would say that actually.
Right.
All by myself.
They do that when they're like 2, and then they get older and they're like, come help me. Yeah.
You got this. You got this. Practice saying that, moms.
Right.
Dads, you got this. Homework is best done in a private place away from the center of family attention. Many moms like their kids to be at the dinner table so that they will be available. But a child is so much more likely to figure things out for themselves if they have to get up and walk in and you are there to ask a question. If they're not distracted by all the things going on around in your living room, your dining room, if they're off by themselves, they're much more likely to figure it out.
Right. And a lot of kids will say, can I do my homework at the bar in the kitchen?
Yeah.
So you'll be there. And we're so tempted to say, yeah, sure, just be right here so I'm close by. So I don't have to walk around too.
Right.
But that's too much distraction. And they're going to ask you for too much help. If they're in another room, they're more likely to figure that out for themselves. And I tell my grandkids, don't sit there and yell for me. If you want me, you get up and walk in there and find me. Bring your book, find me. I'm not going to go in there when I hear you yelling for me.
Right.
So that puts them in another place where they can work on it. Now, our responsibility as the parent, make sure they've got pencils, paper, notebook, whatever they need. That's our job. To help them have all the things, to facilitate this.
We are the facilitators.
But A of this is they need to do this all by themselves.
Right.
And B means to back off, and that really means to back off. Don't involve yourself unnecessarily. Now, the beauty of this is if you start this at a young age, by the time they get to 4th and 5th grade, you're basically done with homework.
Right.
Except if a child gets stuck and the request is legitimate, of course, you're going to help them with that. We're not saying you just want to abandon them.
Right,
and say,
right. We
no.
established that.
We're just keeping the goal of raising responsible adults really firmly in our head. And homework is one way to do this. I told my kids, and I tell my grandkids this now. If you get stuck on a problem, don't sit there until I come in there.
Right.
Go to the next problem. You can wait till you get all the way to the end, then come show me the 2 that you didn't get to.
Right.
But kids are very, very likely to just sit there until mom comes to the rescue.
Right.
Well, and you might even say this. You might say, I guess tomorrow you need to ask your teacher for some help.
Exactly.
And let them just do that.
Yes. Fortunately, at this time, that really is the truth. Because some of the things that my kids are studying in chemistry and physics and all that, it's like, you're going to have a little quiet time with
when
your
they
teacher.
get in high school, yeah.
I'm sorry, can you do that
algebra 2, okay, go find the teacher tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, and C is call it quits at a reasonable hour. This is a great way to teach time management. The best way to do this with a consistent bedtime. It's the best way that you can do this. Now, obviously, like with teenagers, that kind of goes out
That's
the window.
different,
It is
right.
different. But with the young ones, they need their rest to be able to function the next day, have a consistent bedtime. I know
Right.
this can be hard with older siblings in sports and all that stuff, as we said. But again, we're applying good management
As
skills.
much as
That's
possible,
what we're working toward.
right? As much as possible. Say that you've determined that their bedtime is 9 o'clock, and that means homework's done, everything is done.
Right.
You know, the other night I had one of the grandkids, and he needed to study for a test, and he really had plenty of time that afternoon. Plenty of time. We did have a ball game for one of the other kids, and that was part of the day, but there was still plenty of other time. I counted, there were 4 hours he actually could have
right.
worked on. And so when it was time for him to go to bed, I said, did you study for a test? And his answer was no. And I just said, okay, you really had plenty of time to do that. So this is up to you.
So did you get up early in the morning
No,
to study?
No, he didn't. And he did fine on the test. He really knew that he knew the material. And at that age, he's 12.
Right.
And at that age, that's his deal.
That's
That's his deal. If he had done poorly, then there would have been some consequences for not managing his time. And that's how
Right.
you help them manage the time. Well,
Right.
I left that up to you, and you did not do that correctly. So next week, when you have a test, then whatever. But he did. He handled it fine. So, you want to set something in place. Like we've said before, don't let things surprise you. Like, oh no,
That's
we
right.
want to set it in place. That here's what's going to happen.
That's right.
And of course, it's different if you've got a first grader than if you've got a 12-year-old or you've got a 16-year-old.
Yes.
Totally different. Hopefully, by the time they're 12 and 16, there's very little work for you to do. You've helped them
Right.
establish their own routines. They can do work by themselves, with the exception of coming to ask you a question or two.
But there's still, for me, I still have to, I told you that I have to check in. And if I find that things are not being managed the way they're being projected or not as well as they need to be, I just have to, the little consequence, get a plug in
Right.
for one of the technology or, they need to know that you're still there to enforce.
Absolutely.
the
Coaches are
rules.
still there.
That's right.
They're
And there are still
monitoring,
consequences.
They're managing and
That's it.
monitoring the behavior, but they aren't right there sitting beside them as so
Right.
many parents are today.
And that's why I
sitting
said
beside
that
them.
because
Right.
we really are not saying that you just pull all the way back. We want to make sure you understand that we do want you to be there to coach and to but it'll make the peace in your home so much different.
Right. Absolutely. So establish a time for them to get their homework done. Then, you can look at their assignments, encourage them to do what they can do, and just then leave them to get it done by themselves. Just say, here's what I expect you to do. And, oh, great, I know you can do it. I'll be back in a little bit to check what you've done.
Okay, so
perfect.
Before we go, you think we should run back through the ABC real quick?
You can. Yep, we can do it.
Okay, so A was all by myself. They really do need to learn to do it all by themselves, and they can.
And they
just
can.
stay on the perimeter. A is for all by myself.
B is for just back off. That goes right along with all by myself. You're going to let them be all by themselves because you're going to back off and not be there unnecessarily.
That's right. You're going to be available only when needed, but not unnecessarily. And then you know what? Make sure that we call it quits in a reasonable hour. Let's have our bedtimes and our quiet times, our family times. And these 3 steps will make things so much simpler. That's why they're the ABCs.
That's right. All right, before we go, we do want to recommend John Roseman's book one more time, Ending the Homework Hassle. Has a lot more information in it. And we want to tell you this. Don't give up. God's given you this very special job, and you can do it.
Amen. Speak life into your children's hearts every day. Use words that build them up and bring them closer to God.
And be consistent. Kids thrive on consistency in homework life and every area of their life.
That's right. But remember, consistency does not mean boring. So have fun with your kids.
We'll see you next week.
Y'all have a good week.